Welcome to Creative Labs by Alchemy, a podcast from alchemymerch.com that explores the lives of creators and their experiences bringing their art to the marketplace. Hosted by Greg Kerr.
Hey, welcome to the Creative Lab. I'm Greg, your host, and today I'm here with Josh from Zen Monkey Studios. He is the owner and the head creative for the company, and they primarily focus on licensing of anime, cartoons, video games. All right, welcome, Josh, and thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Good. How would you, if you had to do an elevator pitch about what you guys do, how would you describe what the company is?
Zen Monkey Studios was founded in 2012. Basically, I was a freelancer and I was making shirt designs for other companies. And when something worked right, the checks were nice and big. And then I would have no payment for like 5 months at a time. So, around January 2012, it was my parents and I were having dinner, and Mom actually said to Dad and I, like, maybe we need to focus all our energy on turning Josh's freelance work into a company. So we became an official LLC company in that summer, July 4th, 2012. And we sold 6 shirt designs, and then we shifted into printing my art onto posters. And that actually did okay for the very first Christmas. And it took us about 3 years, but I always believed in this. But we started doing licensing work around 2014, 2015. And once we started working with Cartoon Network for Rick and Morty, that kind of changed everything from being like, this is building up into being something into, oh, this is really something.
So how do you get into do it? Like, what made you decide to do licensing? Because you're doing your own designs, your own brand. You know, there's that one path where you go, I'm going to build this brand that's Zen Monkey in whatever direction you want to do. Or you decide, what makes you decide to get into licensing? Because it's one of those things that I think a lot of people feel is either completely unattainable, or you have to be some mega company in order to get involved in this. So like, what makes you decide to even look into that? And then how do you even go about finding, what was your first license?
So I just felt like there's only so far you can go if you're doing like original stuff where no one has any idea who you are, and like parody stuff or goofy things. So like there's sites that still exist, but not nearly as popular as it was back in like 2010, 2011, called like T-Fury or Ripped Apparel or Shirt Punch. And, they were attracting a lot of pop culture themed art and designs. And I would submit to them and I would get picked to be part of their 24-hour sale. And I would get $1 per shirt. And it did really well, but I felt like for my own brand, like I can only do so much. And I would just sit by myself at night and do the math, being like, to make $1 million in a year, I'd have to sell like 50,000 shirts at $20 each. And I sold 30 shirts the first month we are live. So I don't have any idea how this is going to be sustainable to like have a salary and have a family. And I really just felt like if I want to get into like comic book stores with pop culture products, I need to have a license. So I didn't do it correctly the very first time, but I went on to companies' websites and I would like contact like head of production or head of like manufacturing or whatever I saw. And one of the first companies I did that to was the Jim Henson Company. And they spoke, I showed them what I was capable of doing. And they responded saying like, we can have a talk if you're interested. This is not the normal way, but your art is cool. So let's talk. and she spoke to Dad and myself on the phone, and the license lady said to have a Jim Henson license, it would be $15,000 minimum guarantee. Are you guys okay with that? And we didn't know anything back then, so we're like, that makes sense to us. Let's do it. And she's like, oh, wait, really? So yeah, we signed the papers, and then end of 2014, we were making Fraggle Rock of all things as our first licensed stuff. But that was also the year at New York Comic Con that Justin Roiland found our booth, and one of my friends was helping me sell, and I was taking an order at the other side of the booth, and he's like, Josh, you should get over here and talk to this guy. And Rick and Morty season 1 ended like a few months ago, and they were in production for season 2. But I did see Rick and Morty after they promoted like the Christmas episode on YouTube. And then I liked it, so I started actually watching it. I recorded it on my DVR, and I would watch bootleg downloads with my friend when we visited Yosemite for our 30th birthday. And so Justin was there, and he was like, hey, I'm Justin Roiland, I created Rick and Morty. I'm like, I love that show. And then he goes, oh, yeah, Rick, go ahead. And he like does the voice really fast. And I said, how do I get your license? And he's like, that's why I'm here.
Oh,
because like I'm looking around for companies that I think are unique and cool, and I think you guys actually fit that. So we kept in touch, and then he was promoting Loot Crate, and I'm like, actually, I made 2 shirts for Loot Crate, and he's like, really? So then he emailed his manager of licensing at Cartoon Network and said, I want you to talk to Zen Monkey Studios to get the Rick and Morty license. And she was like, okay, it'll be is $10,000 okay? I'm like, that's cheaper than Fraggle Rock. Yes. So we did, and that like changed everything for us. Because when season 2 came out, like the first 3 episodes were like leaked by accident. So like there was Blips and Chits merchandise all over the place that wasn't official. And like Justin had my cell phone at this point. He was like, get this to market. And I'm like, do you want me to like fly to LA and like watch season 2 animatics so we can be ahead of these bootlegs? And he's like, yes, great idea. And we did that for seasons 2 and 3. But then, with our relationship with Justin and Rick and Morty, and basically being the only licensee outside of Oni Press actually making Rick and Morty stuff, Oni Press contacted us and said that we should work together. And we did like some Rick and Morty collab boxes with us and Jinx Apparel, because they had the like plush doll license. And like we did like the Meeseeks mystery box, like Christmas special, and we sold out in like 4 hours.
Wow.
So with Oni Press, they kept liking to, working with us, and they had the Invader Zim license. So they basically allowed us to set up an appointment with Nickelodeon to start talking about licenses for their shows too. Okay. And once Nickelodeon got on board, everyone started going on board with us.
Yeah, because I mean, Nickelodeon's a huge company, and to kind of go back with, you talk to the Jim Henson Company, and they say it's a $15,000 minimum guarantee. Like what does that mean? If somebody's looking to get a license, whether it's a huge property or a small property, what does a guarantee actually mean that you're kind of signing up and agreeing to?
Yeah, so and the minimum guarantee in MG is a contractual price that we're willing to pay the licensor to have the license, saying no matter how much we sell, we're paying you this much money. So like with 15,000 for 10% royalties, we're basically saying we think we're going to make $150,000 the next 2 years, and 10% of those sales, $15,000, will cover. But if we don't hit $150,000 in sales, you're still getting $15,000 minimum guarantee.
Okay. And then if you sell more than that, then let's say so it's got a $15,000 guarantee, and then there's, let's just say, for example, a 10% royalty. So essentially you're paying that 10% royalty, trying to fill that gap to what that minimum is. You don't sell enough, you still owe $15,000, too bad. So you sell beyond that amount. At that point, are you basically paying 10% on the sale, of all of the money made on that product beyond that point?
Right. So
Okay.
after the minimum guarantee, the royalty basically kicks in. So if we made $15,001, now we're paying 10% of $1. And then it just keeps going, and then we have to do the reports every 3 months, so quarterly, and then a month after that, we get the money and we send them royalty checks.
Okay. And when you're working with a company, so you go about this getting the Jim Henson one in kind of a not the usual channels, and you guys sign the contract. What happens? I mean, do they? I know with you guys that you like to do your own spins and think of new creative ways to approach these properties. But, you sign on, do they give you are they like, hey, here's a bunch of kind of stock imagery to choose from, make things from this? Or like, how does that work once you actually get a license for something? Like, can you do, any kind of Fraggle Rock thing you want? Or, do they approve things? Like, how does that work?
Oh, it all depends on the client. So Fraggle Rock did allow original art to be made. It just needed to be approved. There's an entire approval process, even with assets that they give you, which is usually called style guides. So basically, they just want to make sure that you don't go off-brand too much. But then there's other clients where you have to follow the style guide to a T, and you don't have any creative freedom. No matter how hard you try. So sometimes some products that you see from us is us like really testing the limits of what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And that's also why we see with some fans being like, oh, it's the same pose that you see on 1,000 shirts. And I'm like, yeah, there's a reason for that. But
right. You're right. You're like, these are the assets they'll allow us to use. So, you guys make Fraggle Rock. At this point, we're still making primarily T-shirts, or are you doing pins, or like, what was the product that got, Justin stops by the booth and goes, hey, this stuff's really cool. Like, what was the product that you guys had made that kind of drew him in? Because at that point, obviously, Rick and Morty, it's been on TV, but it sounds like there's not really a lot of merchandise that's really getting made. And he's actually seeks it out and goes, hey, your stuff's cool. Can you do my show too? Like, what was it that drew him in?
I think it was just the, even though we're small, we try to go for a level of quality, even if it's like the booth display or interactivity with the customer. So I think it was that combined with just original stuff. So we were doing original Fraggle Rock stuff and selling them. And I think he was like, I've never seen Fraggle Rock of all things like that. I kind of like this. This is unique. Because he was really looking for companies that would make something cool and not found like at just a Hot Topic. Because back then, that was a client. It wasn't Hot Topic or Spencer's Gift. It was a company called Ripple Junction. And they're big. They take care of all those stores. So he kind of came to me being like, can you, like, they're not doing anything. They made one shirt with Rick pulling the eyelids from Morty. And like, that's it. That's that one shirt in the market at the time. And I'm like, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that. And we'll throw it on our site. People were bootlegging us left and right too. But I just remember like we're at like Boston Comic-Con, I think. And people are all in Rick and Morty costumes, and they're holding up our shirts. And I take photos, and I texted the photos to Justin, and he'd be like, "You're the only one selling our stuff." So that was before Pickle Rick, but that's just what resonated with him. Is he actually does really care about the audience, because he really just wants to make cool, nerdy cartoons with dick and fart jokes, but. He really just he's like, I don't care if I get a cut of the sales. I just want to have something cool for the fans. And I also want to like get some jobs to the artists that worked on seasons 1 and 2 with me to get them a few extra bucks.
Yes. And so you're doing, Rick and Morty, I mean, obviously at the time when this opportunity comes up, you're probably not thinking what Rick and Morty is going to become, and I know we met. I think the first thing that we did together was, of course, a Pickle Rick pin for San Diego Comic-Con At this point, I don't even know what year it was.
I think it was 2017 when season 3 was about to air.
Yeah, and and so you were doing, obviously, like we spoke. You're already doing pins at this point, but you'd been doing, like, when did you start making pins? So when you got the Rick and Morty license, was it okay? I'm allowed to do T-shirts. How does that work? Or just because you get a license doesn't mean you can make, like, literally anything. You can't go make notepads and every little thing your heart desires. Like, when you got a license, did they say you can do XYZ products? How did pins get involved?
So I really like pins as a fan. I just like the whole concept of something shiny to collect and trade and wear on a lanyard when you're at Disney World or, the Olympics or whatever. And I don't know, like, I'm at conventions all the time and I see people wearing lanyards that, weren't really decorated because, back then the pin craze was just starting. So I just said to my contact, I'm like, can we amend our license to include pins? I just really believe in pins. I think this is an untapped market for Rick and Morty. And she went radio silent for 3 months. And I'm like, we're making some prototypes. So we made some prototypes with the shirt people that I worked with. And I'm like, here, I'm sending you samples. And we did. We sent them samples. And finally, after 3 months, they responded being sorry for being silent, but we just wanted to make sure if it was stepping on any toes. Yeah, we're going to amend your contract and allow you to sell pins. And the pins, pins went from being 0% of our sales to 33% in half a year. And so then we started just going to our other licensors to get agreements of just pins and accessories because, we're saying, look, Ripple Junction will take care of shirts for Hot Topic. And if you want to go to the Gap directly or Old Navy, let them do the shirts. But there's this market for pins. And they're like, okay, sure, whatever. And then, that allowed Nickelodeon to hop on, which allowed, some anime companies to jump on. And, first with Nickelodeon, we just had Airbender, Korra, and Invader Zim, and then Double Dare. And they were so happy with what we were doing for Airbender and Korra that they brought us back into the offices in Manhattan. And they said, we want you to work on SpongeBob and Ninja Turtles. Is that okay? And I'm like, yes, that's okay.
Yeah, you're obviously, yeah, we are into that. Yeah.
So, then we basically amended that agreement. So it's almost all of Nickelodeon. And they've been supportive, for 4 years now, very much. So, unfortunately, there's other pin companies that are getting the same license as us, which... my insecure self is but I'm the pin guy for Nickelodeon. What's going on here? But, when you think about it, for licensed companies, you can get Nickelodeon shirts that are licensed on Amazon using Amazon's print on demand. You can get official Nickelodeon stuff at Hot Topic and Spencer's from probably 2 different manufacturers. You can go to Old Navy. You can go to the Gap and get SpongeBob stuff. You can go to SpongeBobMerchandise.com and get SpongeBob stuff. So, what's another 3 to 4 licensees? And that kind of, I think, as you picked up, we focused on trying to take what we're given, the assets, and make something different. Especially because we would go to a comic book store and we would see Rick and Morty pins from another company, and we're like, what about our pins? We have 10 times more options as they do. And they're kind of well, we already have this company as one of our vendors for the last 15 years. It's just going to be a lot of work to get another company just for pins when we can already get the pins, whatever we need. So that was the moment where I was like, we have to differentiate ourselves or we're going to not get wholesale clients because they're just going to go for convenience. And that's kind of when we shifted our mentality to our pins as, yes, an accessory, but also something to trade and collect, like baseball cards.
Yeah. And what makes you decide to go after a property? Because at this point, you've the Rick and Morty thing, that was kind of like, I don't want to say luck, but like one of those moments where you were doing something the way you wanted to do it, following, your design, the way that you wanted to do Fraggle Rock. Somebody recognizes that. It just happens to turn into something that is a big thing, which then opens, like I said, the door to Oni Press. And then they're saying, oh, hey, we do Invader Zim. Maybe you should talk to Nickelodeon. That all of a sudden you've got Nickelodeon. It's a massive company. Everybody knows SpongeBob and Ninja Turtles and all these things, and you're dipping your toes into that. At this point now, what makes you decide? Because even within Nickelodeon, there's a gazillion properties, so what makes you decide we want to make pins for, this one specific show? I want to do, the Jenny robot one, or whatever it is. Like, what's making you decide to make the products that you want to do? Is it based off of the nostalgia for the things that you grew up with, or like what makes you go after certain things?
It's a combination of all of that. It's a combination of nostalgia. Unfortunately, that also means my love for the Ninja Turtles does not equate to sold products. So, I'm kind of blown away by how many Ninja Turtle licensees there are when we actually struggle. It does not do well on Amazon. It does not do that great on our site, except for the super fans who really saved us last year during the pandemic. They were the Ninja Turtle fans. But they do well at comic book stores. So one of our distributors, there's big orders for Ninja Turtle only stuff. And it's really hard to gauge. But then with we also have the license for the Loud House, which is supposed to be like Nickelodeon's #2 animation for kids of a certain age. And I kind of want kids to buy our stuff too. But, we're scared to pull the trigger because if we can't sell Ninja Turtles very well, how are we going to expect these guys? But we're trying to prepare us for the future, because with Ninja Turtles and whatnot, nostalgia can only get you so far. Then we do stuff like Megalobox with Viz Media. We spoke to TMS Anime directly. They sold the American rights to Viz. And we spent a $5,000 minimum guarantee. It's winning awards on Crunchyroll, and it's winning awards for all these anime sites and whatnot. We had a good premiere at New York Comic Con with our limited edition stuff, and then it stopped. The sales never came. Even when season 2 aired a few months ago, the very last pins that are on Amazon are still on Amazon because no one's looking for any Megalobox product. And it's it was shocking. Then we would do something with the #3 superhero company, which is the Valiant Comics. And my assistant at the time, she has friends that are comic book authors, and she said that they're really building something up. And I'm like, okay, let's, if they feel comfortable, because, Bloodshot's coming in movie theaters in 2020, let's do this in 2019. And when we told buyers what we had, they actually laughed at our guy Mark on the phone, being like, no, we meant Batman or Spider-Man. We don't want Bloodshot.
Oh, man.
So, that was a big loss for us because of the minimum guarantee. But then, we're trying to be a little bit more conservative and trying to find properties that there is no nostalgic connection, because, you could be right. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was not, it existed since the 80s in Japan, but it didn't really come into America until I want to say 2014 or so. And that was massively successful for us. But then Airbender wasn't successful until it got re-released on Netflix, and now it's #2 for us. And, and then with things like Teenage Robot and Danny Phantom, with all these other companies getting the pin license for Nickelodeon, they're talking about Airbender, SpongeBob, Ninja Turtles, Zim, sometimes Korra, but they're not talking about Teenage Robot. They're talking about Rugrats, they're talking about Ren and Stimpy, they're talking about Hey Arnold, but they're not talking about Odd Parents, Danny Phantom, Teenage Robot, and some of these other things. So I'm like, let's try, because there is no market. And then the super fans find us and blow out our inventory as if it's like, better than Rick and Morty, better than SpongeBob.
Yeah, I mean, JoJo was an interesting one. I'm not really up on a ton of anime in general. And my wife and I, Vicky, she started watching JoJo after you got the license, because you started sending over products and the names. There were so many characters. I'm like, we have to watch this. I'm just super confused with all these people, what's going on. And the show is so ridiculous and amazing. If anybody hasn't watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, definitely suggest checking it out, where Vicky got like obsessed with it and we blew through it so fast. I'm still confused. There's still so many people, but like, what makes you go get JoJo? It wasn't on Netflix. It ended up, I think, going to Netflix at some point along the way, but you went and got this show that I don't think was necessarily getting a ton of attention. Was it just, were you like, I like this show, I think it's cool, let's try and see if we can get it?
I think the pin world, or the pin industry, is sort of like first to bat for meme culture.
Okay. And
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is really popular for the memes as well as its bizarre plot. So, our head of art, Jeremy, he knows his anime and video games. And I said, hey, we need to get into anime. And like I know of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure from this Capcom fighting game from the 90s or early 2000s. Like what's going on here? And he's like, oh, well, they're doing an anime adaptation of the manga. I'm like, yeah, but the manga came out like in 87, right? He's like, yeah, but the anime's now. So it's good. And like there's all the memes are based on the internet are from the anime. So yeah, double whammy. You get meme pins and you get anime pins. So I was like, all right. And then I read some of the manga and I'm like, this is so weird. I think I like this. And then I watched some on Hulu and I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And the creator, Araki-san, or Araki-sensei, they were very worried about him because he doesn't do very well with approvals. And then he saw our pins and he's like, are they going to make more of these or is this it? And they were like, he wants to know if you're going to make more pins. I'm like, yeah, we're going to make more pins. And like ever since then, he basically everything we submit to them is approved because they just want to make sure that the creator is happy with us. So, it was like Jeremy confirming that there's an entire meme culture and anime, and like those two combined is like a powerhouse. And I think, the stock market's learning the hard way that the meme culture is like just a part of society now.
Yeah, double down on your GameStop and just keep holding, right?
Yeah, so that's what's going on. People are going, to be continued. That's a funny meme. Yeah, I'll get that for $10.
Yeah. And I think one thing you've kind of hinted on, because there's a lot of people that do fan art, and I definitely understand anybody that's done art, in their life at any point. You get inspired by different stuff. You try and draw your favorite characters. There's obviously a certain feeling that if it exists on the internet, it's a free for all. And they do fan art, but you can't sell a fan art pin, legally on Amazon. So with doing licensing, that's opened up other channels for you. Like you can officially sell to a store, to a comic book store, or you can sell on Amazon. And has that helped, in terms of getting the word out or moving product, like having those platforms by having official licenses?
Yeah, because there are a lot of fans that love artist interpretations of the characters. And then there's probably just as many fans that just want something official and like supported by like Capcom. Like, for example, our Ace Attorney pins, if you go in the Ace Attorney subreddit, they're just so happy that there's another company starting to make them something. But before us, they would get the fan made bootleg or whatever pin designs of the same characters, and we just happily join the collection for the fans. But yeah, like on Amazon, we have our problems with Amazon because they don't get the message always that we're official. But it also kind of validates what we've been doing. And then like other stores say, hey, you're selling on Amazon. Like, we want in on this. And yes, that's kind of what I wanted with licenses in the first place, is that like there's only so much and so far you can go. Like licensing stops, like it's a trade-off. Like it stops at it opens up new doors for revenue and money, but also you lose a bit of your creativity. So you have to be creative in different ways. So while an artist or a fan can make the characters look any way they want, I can't do that. So I need to like figure out other methods of uniqueness that also makes us stand out from other licensees, like Fig Pins, that basically take the art from the style guide and that's it. They just say, here you guys go. It's 3 inches tall.
Right.
Collect them all. And they're nice, but they're also the style guide art and no unique take on it. So
when I've seen you've gotten into doing some different kind of design series, so I think one that really comes to mind that I see a lot with your stuff is you do these, it's like a gold pin, screen printing, one color, black, and then a glitter background with some epoxy going on it. What made you... Yeah, I feel like that, or I think you had a diamond series kind of shape one you're trying, like, made you dip into that. And when you're taking something and you're like, here's the property, I'm not using the style guide, I'm using this art, we're kind of designing as a one color, we want to do glitter, we want to do this weird thing. What made you decide to get into doing kind of like a series vibe? And did you have any pushback from the licensors when you were coming up with these kind of new takes on the property?
Well, basically, the Diamond series is the one I believed in. I just liked the composition of diamonds, and I thought that would resonate with everyone. But we started that with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Lupin the Third, and people and Japan is very, very specific when it comes to the details and eyes. And they want all the white in the eyes, no matter what. And when you make a pin, if it's not sealed in within metal, you're going to have to print it on. But then if it's a certain size, the print might turn into a blot. So there's all these physical impossibilities that all these Japanese properties want us to do, that I said, this is going back and forth for this Diamond series forever. Let's here's this I like hexagons. I also like gold glitter background, screen print, done. Let's submit. And then JoJo approved of them. Mm-hmm. So those were first to market before the diamonds, and they sell like crazy. They're just beautiful because it's the art cleaned up with shininess. And anime fans love shiny, and pin collectors love shiny. And it just became like a match in heaven for us. And it became a point where we're like, okay, we have found a working formula that's proven successful with almost all properties that we do this with. And now became like going to like Funimation saying, okay, we have JoJo's Bizarre Adventure with Viz Media. Now we want Cowboy Bebop. And they're like, look, Cowboy Bebop is doing well, so how about Soul Eater? Well, Soul Eater's doing well, and Cowboy Bebop is doing well. What else you got? Attack on Titan, let's do it. And then, we just say, we will do this, the Golden Series. And then once we do that, we will expand beyond. So they kind of now know what we're going to make with for them. And it kind of like made this like a reassurance that like we're going to give them quality plus more. And also, like, this is what it's going to look like, so you're not going to be confused why, the character is just, black and gold.
Right. And, at least when you're doing something like that, like I said, you're breaking it down to, you've got the line work, something shiny. I mean, you can't beat glitter, add some epoxy on there, everything shines, it looks good. So when you're saying like you got Cowboy Bebop and Soul Eater and these other things, and when you're working with a new company that you start with and you're showing them this stuff, were they suggesting, or was it, the relationship was going kind of well and you go, hey, what else do you guys have, that we might be interested or might have a chance at getting, because, it sounds like originally you kind of did things how you wanted to do it. That opened a door. And then you kept on doing things the way you wanted to do it, like according to your vision, that opened the next door. To the point, it's not like you just jumped in and said, hey, give me SpongeBob, some random thing. You've worked your way up by kind of continuing with that vision. So when you're going to these companies now, are they trying to say, like, what are you interested in it? Like, hey, here's everything we have, or do you still kind of have to poke to get different properties and go after them, like, really targeted?
It's a mix, like with Nickelodeon, they were kind of like, we have Garfield. Do you want Garfield? And I'm like, I don't know, like, who in my world would buy Garfield from us outside of Amazon, maybe. And they go, we got South Park. And I'm like, okay, let's work with South Park. And then I'm like, what about, like, I don't want Beavis and Butthead, but I want Daria. And they're like, well, okay, send us an application. And then I'm like, I don't have time to do all this right now. So then I lost it to, who's that other Brooklyn pin company? Pinthrill. Pinthrill is doing Nickelodeon and Daria and Beavis and Butthead now. So I was like, oh, well, whatever. We don't need a seventh pin company doing it.
Yeah.
But then with Funimation, it's like we started going like, we kind of want My Hero Academia. And they're like, nope. I'm like, okay, I want Cowboy Bebop. They're like, sure, okay, no problem. And then, Soul Eater was because we were scared after Megalobox flopping for us to do something with no history. And they were trying to sell Fire Force to us. They said, if you're worried about Fire Force, the creator of Fire Force also made Soul Eater. So, when we didn't even talk about the licensing expo. When I was at a licensing expo, I saw people with Soul Eater tattoos, and I was like, okay, maybe we should do it. If people are going to tattoo their body with these characters, then let's do some anime pins of them. But then I would go to Sega and I'm like, I want Sonic the Hedgehog, but if Sonic the Hedgehog is too hard to get, I'll get Altered Beast. And they're like, no, actually Altered Beast is hard to get. You can have Sonic.
That really Altered Beast. You're like, what am I going to do? Give me some Golden Axe. I've got 3 designs and I'm done.
All the old Sega stuff from the 80s and early 90s is actually harder for approvals.
Interesting.
So they said, just focus on Sonic. And then, but then, I go to Sesame Street. I want Sesame Street. They're like, yes, Sesame Street, rock and roll, do it. Do some adult stuff for us. But, I go to Sony or whoever has the rights to the Beatles, and they're like, oh, well, we already got people for that. So,
yeah. So for somebody that's interested in getting into licensing, because like I said, it's definitely like a different path. And and one thing, like I said, I like about you guys are like a small family team, and you've worked your way up to these massive properties, where people probably think like, oh, there's some, mega faceless corporation, fig pin kind of, who the hell knows? There's 1,000 people. But you started out, you guys, family business, you and your dad, and I don't know who else, if you guys had anybody else involved in the beginning. But what do you suggest to somebody that's like interested in getting into licensing, interested in doing that, outside of a pandemic kind of year where, there's a licensing expo or something like that? Like, what would you suggest somebody do if they're interested in getting a property or getting involved in that?
The first thing to start is don't if you have no history of running companies, then you need to build a few years experience of your company so that when these companies do background checks on you, they know that you're at least trying, I want to say, or there is a source of revenue coming in so that you're not a big risk or a time suck for them. We are sort of experiencing people coming to us because they could not get a license for their online e-commerce company that they started 7 months ago. And so instead of get their own license, they were told to just buy from people like us. So these people really want to factor in like your history, and if you have a foot in the market that you're trying to do stuff with. And then also like, okay, like let's say you are offering shirts, they might say you can do shirts, but it can only be on your site. It can only be at like your booth at a convention. It can only be this and that, because we already have relationships with these other companies that take care of the malls. They take care of Bloomingdale's or Gap or whatnot. So like that's already taken care of. We don't want to ruin our relationship with these other companies. So like factor all that stuff in, and understand, because those other companies exist, like find your niche. Like if I don't have the keychain license for some of these anime properties, because there's another keychain vendor that already exists for them and they don't want me to step on their feet. So like if you're like, look, I made NFT site and we brought in $10 million. I want to do I'm not Tops, but I do want to make like collectible Disney NFTs. They might say, sure, minimum is blah, blah, blah. But you got permission now. So, yeah, I really think it's really finding a hole in the market and filling it in. Because when we did shirts, and only shirts, it was a lot harder to get licenses than pins. And then we were filling a hole that needed to be filled for the pin market. And then now that everyone's doing pins, our name recognition for the past 7 or so years of doing these kind of offsets the fact that yes, there might be like Pin Club or Fig Pin or Pin Thrill or BioWorld, which is an accessory company, already doing that property, because we're saying we do all this for all these properties right now, but look how different our version is.
So you can kind of like run alongside it and have it at the same time. I mean,
right. Like Hot Topic and Box Lunch have come to us to, buy our pins at wholesale, but they're already selling, JoJo Bizarre Adventure pins, or they're already selling SpongeBob pins. They just want our versions because they think it would complement what they already have rather than cannibalize what they already have.
So if somebody, if they're looking at it, you go, obviously you can't jump into, I don't know if anybody wants Rick and Morty at this point, but, you can't jump in and off the street and say, hey, I want to get a Rick and Morty license, or I want to get Soul Eater or Attack on Titan. Is it kind of, do you feel like going with, not to say that Fraggle Rock is like a small property by any means, but, something more attainable helped, do you feel like that was worth getting your foot in the door with something like that was probably the smart move versus attempting to go after something big, even if you guys had been established in some other sense of t-shirts as a personal brand or whatever it is, would you say like go for something attainable to learn about that world first, or what would your advice be there?
If you already have like a history of sales, like I've been selling on my site for 3 years, and I've been selling on Amazon for 2, and I've been going to conventions and blah blah blah. If you are able to prove all that, then I say yes, go for something that is affordable, and go for something that you believe in, and also go for something that is obtainable, because it's neglected in the market. I'm not doing Teenage Robot because no one else is doing it. I said I believe in this, and no one else is doing it. Right. So let's go give it a shot.
And what's a typical? So let's say obviously every property is going to have different percentages and things like that. But to give if there was a blanket idea, I think you said Fraggle Rock was. What was it? 15 grand, and then there's a 10%. What's kind of I don't want to say your average, or a kind of typical sort of setup of a royalty that you would be paying? Because, like I said, some people might not understand the royalty. You're paying that on every sale that happens with that product. You're paying that percentage. Like, what's a typical kind of range of a royalty percentage?
The royalty percentage for us these days is probably an average of 12 to 13%. It was 10% in the past, but we grew. or our ambitions grew. So they said, if you can't afford a certain minimum guarantee amount, then we want a larger royalty count. So basically, they're saying, like, if you can hit a $5,000 minimum guarantee, well, then we want 14% going forward. So there's that. The industry standard for what we're doing is probably between 10 to 15 or 16%. When you're going lower, that's a good deal for you. Basically means that the company is like, we might not make a lot of money, but they're doing something for us that no one else is doing. So let's give them a go. And if they're asking for more money, it's like, these guys are legit, but they're a small company, so they have to just have more of a royalty beyond the minimum guarantee.
So they're kind of balancing a little bit, it's kind of specific based off the company and what you have to offer in a sense, or what they think they might get out of it, where they're going to balance out that somewhat flat fee, that minimum guarantee matched with the percentage. But, like, let's say, I forget when you got JoJo, I would imagine that you kind of ended up blowing past that minimum guarantee.
Yep, we did.
And I assume, like, in that scenario, are the companies, when you kind of blow past that amount that initially they're thinking maybe we'll do this, how does that kind of affect the relationship? All of a sudden, does it like open the doors a little bit, or, when things come around again, like, are the companies stoked about that? It
sort of opens the door. Like with Viz Media, we got Inuyasha, but I don't think they would have agreed to it if we didn't do well with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because Megalobox we bombed, but JoJo we blew out of the water. And it's really what the big the negative effect of doing so well is when you want to renew the license, they go, well, you said the minimum guarantee was 10,000, but you made us 150,000. So, like, can't you start at like 40,000 minimum guarantee? And that's what happened with Rick and Morty. Our 10,000 turned into 30,000 for the renew, and then that turned again to 50,000. And then if we renewed Rick and Morty this year, then that 50 would be 100,000 minimum guarantee. But in Rick and Morty's demand, I'm sure as a lot of people watching this, it kind of went the other direction. So,
yeah.
Like, I would continue Rick and Morty if it was like 15,000 minimum guarantee, not 50, not 30, and definitely not 100.
So you have to take that into consideration. And then, so let's say if this, like, the Rick and Morty license you guys have is coming to an end at a certain point, what does that actually mean for you guys as a company? So let's say you've got, thousands of Rick and Morty products that you have, and a license doesn't renew. What happens at that point?
We have a 60 to 90 day sell-off period, usually. Sometimes, like with Capcom, I think we have a 120 sell-off day. We have, like, basically when the contract ends, manufacturing must stop. But you still have 2 to 3 months to sell what you have in inventory. And then you report that for the final royalties to be like, here you guys go. This is what we made during the sell-off period. Nice knowing you. And if you can't sell all that stuff still, then legally you're supposed to throw it out.
I mean, you guys deal with a lot. You have a lot of different properties, a lot of different inventory. How do you manage things like that? Because as the company's growing, as Amazon's growing, I mean, we saw you guys have been doing Airbender for a couple of years, right? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Airbender's like the number one show on Netflix for, I don't even know how long it was, a couple weeks or whatever. How do you...
I think for like 20 weeks, they said.
That's insane. I mean, it's amazing. It was the first time I had ever watched it and loved Korra. But how do you manage inventory? Like, what happens all of a sudden? Are you kind of keeping an eye out? Like, oh, hey, they're going to make a new live action series of Cowboy Bebop for Netflix. Or, as Daniel had asked kind of earlier, mentioned, like, the Ninja Turtles game's potentially going to help. There's a new game coming out. Do you track these kinds of things to go... do we just stock up like crazy, or is it sort of, because you've got manufacturing times to factor that could be 4 weeks, 8 weeks, something crazy. Yep. Could be even longer. Like, yeah. How do you manage things like that?
It's I don't think we can right now. I think because of the size of the company, I just can't do that because, let's say we did have the Valiant license for Bloodshot the movie. And even though Bloodshot's film release got shortened because of COVID, we still had product on Amazon, and it still did not sell before, during, or afterwards. So if we stocked up on Bloodshot stuff for that movie, we would have been screwed.
Yeah.
JoJo's renewal for part 6 with Jolene, like that did see a minor surge. Invader Zim's movie saw a huge surge. Like Invader Zim like jumped into the top 3 on Amazon after Enter the Fortress came out on Amazon, Netflix, excuse me. And we couldn't match demand. And then it kind of like balanced out, and it's slightly better than it was before the movie, but it's almost the same. And Airbender, like basically when we saw the surge coming, we rushed in new product to get made for the holiday season, but we had a bunch of product that we retired that we just brought back into manufacturing, saying, I mean, we haven't made this since 2017, but 2020 is a little bit different. Go, please. We need stuff in the market now. And that did work. And then Rick and Morty season 4, we did, I did prep work. We had stuff for the first half, and no one bought it. I didn't see the season 4 episodes like I did for seasons 2 and 3 because, unfortunately, my contact, Mike Mendel, he died. I think he had a stroke. Justin was devastated from that, and corporate. It was getting extremely corporate. All my contacts at Cartoon Network and Adult Swim either got absorbed into Warner Brothers or let go. So I was not talking to the same people anymore. And basically, the guy, Leon, that was helpful at Cartoon Network, that's approving everything with me, he just did like a mass approvals for like 30 SKUs. And I had no idea he was rushing to help me out, being like a final like Hail Mary for me, like get these to market because it's going to be a nightmare after this. And that's what happened. But the products didn't sell except for like 3 SKUs out of 30. And, we just came to the realization that there's no point in trying to beat the bootleggers and trying to beat Spencer's Gift to market when the numbers aren't even there. So I can't gauge when it's something is successful and when something isn't, and just to be prepared.
So, I mean, generally just kind of rolling the dice. You're like, hopefully this works. I mean, I think I forget who leaked it at the time, but obviously the Rick and Morty, the gap between, the last season 4 happened. And then there was that teddy bear, Teddy Rick or something, they're like it seemed like they were trying to recreate another Pickle Rick moment, in a sense of like, whoops, we leaked that Rick's going to be a teddy bear.
Yeah.
I know the bootleggers, I know from working with you guys, I think was it season 3, there was stuff that was in production, like months before. And then you guys were basically releasing it, like the episode was done and you had, 2 pins, and Rick and Morty, I know, cause there'd be tons of people that would email us as well, was huge, fucking massive in like the bootleg market. And how much, how much of that really like affects what you guys are doing? Is it, okay, we kind of operate and live side by side, or is it, what are your feelings kind of on that? Like, how does that really like affect you guys?
The Rick and Morty success?
In general, like the bootleg market, because even when JoJo was hitting, and hitting hard, or in the past year, I don't know how many Airbender knockoff everythings I've seen.
I mean, we got our own bootlegs of the Hexagon Golds on Alibaba. It's a mix. Sometimes I get triggered and just want to like take down that entire bootleg company, and sometimes I just go, okay, whatever. Good luck selling that one.
Yeah.
It's just like things are going well for us, and the brand recognition is growing exponentially. And it is getting to the point where people are getting defensive for us, being like, I saw this on Mercari.com. Like, what's going on here? And I'm like, that looks like a vendor just price gouging. It's official, but he's just going above the price. If you can't find it anywhere else, go for it. Otherwise, find it somewhere else for cheaper.
And that's a new thing, right? I mean, I think Amazon is trying to crack down on it a little bit, but people basically buy maybe these limited pins or do whatever, and then they're essentially listing them on eBay, on Mercari, these other secondary selling sites, and then just trying to like jack up the cost, right? And then the drop shipping, like, is that becoming a thing that you guys are seeing a lot more? Is somebody like flipping? I know I think I was out at New York Comic Con and at your booth, and I saw literally, it was like minutes after the show opened and you had limited stuff, it's on eBay.
Yep. Yeah, I think it is happening more and more. I have no issue with flippers. Look, like if you put a camera on my desk, you would see piles of Magic the Gathering cards that I've had as a kid that I'm going to flip to probably build a nursery with. So, like, I get it. Life has changed the past year and a half at this rate. So, like, if these people figured out a way to help them, pay rent or just make a living, like, great. My only issue is when, like, my customers, like, I'm trying to give them the fair price and they poach from us before it gets to the customers. Because, look, when you're on eBay, people aren't hating Microsoft for having Xbox Series X at twice the value, but I'm not a $1 billion company, and I'm trying to get the super fans the product first, and then I kind of want the super fans to like us as much as they can, so that it helps our relationship with them, helps the relationship with our brands. The brands are happy because the super fans are happy because they do care about that stuff. And when our product is sold on from a flipper, they lose a bit of our customer service. If something's wrong, if the pin goes missing or the pin arrives damaged, we'll do our best to fix it or refund them, no problem. But if it's on eBay, and they get it all damaged, I don't want that to reflect on my company being like, oh, I got a shitty pin from eBay. Forget this. I'm not going to their booth at New York Comic Con.
So it's removing the brand experience that you guys are trying to create because, like you said, kind of, you guys are a brand. You're representing these properties. You're making your own, doing your own takes on these properties, but still it's brand, and you want people to get that brand experience with you, buying direct with you, seeing all of that and kind of getting a general feel for what you guys do and how you guys do it differently than, like I said, like a fig pin or some of these other pin trill or whatever. So I mean, what's next for you guys? Like, what's on it? Are you starting to put, when do you start planning holidays? Like what's coming up this year for Zen Monkey that you guys are trying to do?
So I always like to try and make something unique that may or may not be seasonal. Like we're doing the limited edition emblems right now to replace conventions. And if it goes well, we're probably just going to do it from every 3 to 4 months from here on out, no matter what, if we go to a convention or not. It's just something nice, again, for the super fans. The casual fan is not going to buy a Teenage Robot pin for $16, but, the thousands of fans that are famished for product will. So I want to make more stuff for them, but I also want to make stuff for Halloween because Halloween and pins interconnect very well. But if approvals are slow and production is running behind schedule, and then shipping it to places like Amazon or our clients, and then it just sits on a truck in Amazon before it gets beeped into the system, that means we could miss the entire season. And then let's say all of that is not a problem, but we have to start designing and ordering and come up with things now. So we might not have the budget ready for that either. So we have to factor in budgets and go, okay, these normal, Inuyasha gold hexagon pins are good year round, no matter what. We need to restock them, or we can try and see what this jack-o'-lantern maybe does. So it's a trade-off. And we did our SpongeBob pins for Christmas came out, I want to say 2017. And they did terrible 2017 and 18, and then they did great 2019. It doesn't make sense. So, I would love to do more of that stuff, because Christmas and Halloween are big seasons for, tchotchke little things to accessorize your clothing and be in the spirit of the season. But if budget and everything else comes into mind, then I might just say, let's wait till next year.
And with, I'm still waiting for you guys to bring back those melty popsicles, like the Ninja Turtles and SpongeBob ones, where like the eyes were all funky. Just like the popsicles we all ate as kids, and that they still sell. Some of them, those were one of my favorite kind of weird limited things that you guys did. And with working with a place like Amazon, because you guys are doing the Amazon fulfillment, right? So you make. Let's say you make 1,000 of a pin. Do you just send 1,000? You just go, oh, let me send all 1,000 of these to Amazon. Like, how can you just send anything you want there? They hold it, it ships out,
So Amazon uses a lot of algorithms. So when you start, you're limited to like how many products and whatnot and how many things you can ship. First of all, I do fulfillment by Amazon, which means Amazon takes a huge cut of our sales. Probably 48% of the listing goes to Amazon and the rest goes to us. But the quantity is so high that it just helps us no matter what. But when you're starting, like you can only ship, if you do fulfillment by Amazon, a certain amount at a time. You can only, and you have a threshold of storage. So the more you sell, your threshold goes up.
Okay.
So, we sell so fast our product on Amazon that the late storage fees don't really activate for us. But for things that flop or things that just sit there, it's called aging inventory. And aging inventory is a red flag for Amazon, which means it's a risk. So they start ramping up the late fees so that one SKU, even though you have like 80 pins on there, like if you sit on it for 3 years on Amazon and it doesn't sell, they'll charge you like $400 or something. And that adds up. Especially
so you just need to pull it. Just, at a certain point, you're like, this is dead, get it out of there. Because like any fulfillment, any storage company, it's like the stuff is there. Like if it's sitting there, it's taking up space. Obviously, Amazon's got these massive warehouses, but it still takes up space. So they just start basically hitting you to be like, get this out of here.
Right. Amazon is not. I think the best way to describe it is Amazon is not a fulfillment center. So they're a retail company. So they don't really factor in storage fees. If you do fulfillment by Amazon, because they want that stuff out the door as fast as possible so that everyone makes money. But then, so that's good, because if you find a product that you're selling that is selling, then they'll only take their cut after your item sells, which was a lot better of a deal for us with fulfillment centers for our own site, where they would have a storage fee plus a fulfillment fee. And Amazon just does fulfillment fees and then late storage fees. So basically, our worst offenders might be a year old, and then like, let's say one of the old diamond Lupin pins, it says, if you don't dispose of this, you're going to pay $1.30.
Okay.
And that's okay for us. That's the kind of money we're making, where we're like $1.30 fine. Some of them are like 10 cents. But you'll find one that pops up that's like $200 and you're like, dispose.
Yeah.
So you can't really just ship your entire inventory.
Okay.
And
so
also,
they basically tell you like I said, just because you make 1,000, you can't send all 1,000 there. They'll say, hey, we'll take 40.
Yeah. So right now, after COVID, everyone is suppressed basically. And for every new SKU, you can ship a maximum of 200, which for us is perfect, because like we don't go that high unless it's successful. So, but for bigger vendors on Amazon that sell 10,000 units a month, that's a problem for them. So everyone's suppressed to about 200 if it's a new SKU, and then after the sales are going well, then the analytics change, and that's why. For the holidays, we would ship 800 of a SKU, so that by November, we have enough for the holidays.
Okay. So if somebody has like their personal brand, the stuff that they could sell on Amazon, and maybe they've got an Amazon store and they're shipping it themselves, or think about fulfillment, like some of those things to really consider are, Amazon's going to take hefty fees, basically in trade for being on this massive marketplace if they're going to store your stuff. And then also that they may cap what you can send there. So they may be saying, you know, you might be refilling Amazon constantly with the product instead of just being able to send it where, like, saying a regular fulfillment company might say, hey, you send us everything you have, we'll ship it, we charge you X for storage, X for whatever. You know, because like looking at Amazon as somebody that's got a personal brand of, if that could be a good tool for them, like a good selling thing to have their stuff carried. Are there, obviously with you doing the license stuff, it puts you in front of a good marketplace, but are there some other advantages you think of, like a smaller independent seller that does have original product jumping in and trying to sell on a place like Amazon?
If they do fulfillment by merchant and follow the strict guidelines that Amazon has for those merchants, yeah, because you don't have a fulfillment fee anymore, and you don't have to worry about late storage fees or old storage fees. You just have listing fees. So you will get a much better cut if you do it yourself. But, you know, that also means you're going to get people being like, I never got my item, or this is damaged, or this is not what I ordered. All that stuff is now on you. But yes, it's kind of like it's at the point where if you're not on Amazon, then what are you doing? If you're not on like Walmart or Target, like how good of a company can you really be? You know, you got to factor in, like, I think Generation Z and the youngest millennials, they'll go to Etsy, they'll go on Instagram shops, they'll go on Shopify shops. But a lot of older millennials, Gen Xers, boomers, like they'll go instinctively to Amazon to see if it's available, use their Prime account, and just get free shipping to them and get it to them in a day. So, yes, it took us, this year we're 9 years old. And I think this is our 4th year on Amazon.
Okay.
So, you know, it took us a long time for us to go, you know what, because, you know, when we're doing just shirts, that's a whole new ballpark because, you know, of all the dimensions a shirt takes on the shelf and the listings of every size with a pin, you know, one size fits all. So once we really had a foothold and started really getting things to work with pins, we said we should probably really consider getting on Amazon. And it worked right away for us. You know, we did the right keywords, or the fact that, you know, the only Rick and Morty pins that were on Amazon at the moment were bootlegs or generic faces from the other accessory companies. But yeah, it picked up, and then Amazon has like a snowball effect. When people look at your listing and people buy from you, then more people are going to be able to see that, and then more people buy it, and then the ratings come in, and the ratings actually bump it up even more. So yeah, if you get a 3.5 out of 5 star review because, you know, the post broke off, it still makes other people go, at least they got that pin. You know, maybe I won't get a broken post, but
yeah.
At least I'm not getting nothing.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and chatting because, you know, like I said, I think licensing, you know, especially with pins and with the fan art and just in general in the indie art world, the idea of somebody getting into licensing and doing that and being successful with it, it just seems almost like so far out of reach that it's just not attainable. And I think, you know, one thing that you've proven that you did, you started with something, you know, that seemed attainable. I mean, you know, even at the time, it's like you look at it now and you're like, oh, Fraggle Rock was 15,000. But, you know, you started with something like that and you guys are still a family, a smaller business, and you've got these massive properties. And I think it's like a really great story to see that it is attainable. Like you can, if you go through with and follow the vision of what you want to do, that it can happen. And I really appreciate you sharing kind of like your journey with that. And I'm definitely excited to see what you guys keep doing and what, you know, what properties come next for you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, look, if a person is able to look up the Licensing Expo and buy plane tickets and take their samples of what they've accomplished, give it a go. I mean, I've seen people do exactly that. I don't know if any of them got work or got licenses, but they tried.
Right.
And if you try and, have something that is not even pins, but just something that you believed in, someone might say yes. And then, a company might say, like, well, we got, what's the difference between you and, like, Threadless?
Right.
What's the difference between you and what's that stupid print-on-demand company that I don't even know because they're so bad?
That could be any of them.
Them.
Yeah.
Those people.
Redbubble or one of those? I don't...
Worse than Redbubble.
Oh, okay.
Cafe Press.
Cafe
I had a
Press,
meeting at the Licensing Expo the first year I did it, and the woman that works for Warner Brothers was like, well, what's the difference between you and Cafe Press? We do stuff with Cafe Press all the time. So I'm like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not actually interested anymore in Warner Brothers. Thank you. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. For anybody that's checking this out, it'll be up on Twitch for the next 2 weeks, and then we will have it over on our YouTube channel. And Josh, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no problem.
Excellent.
I guess I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right,
That's what
have
my
a good
pins
night.
are.
Later.
All right.
Creative Labs by Alchemy with your host, Greg Kerr. Are you interested in making enamel pins, washi tape, patches, acrylic keychains, and more? Get in touch and create with us at alchemymerch.com.